What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. I need y'all to understand that the African world is getting connected. The African world is connecting itself together. Pan Africanism, as a natural ideology for black unity, as a natural state of being for black people, which is Pan Africanism. That's the natural state of the black person. A black person who values community above all, right? And as we see it manifest itself in today's global world, we see African heads of states actively reconnecting with its diaspora. We see African monarchs reconnecting and establishing itself with its diaspora. All forms of leadership and organized religions and spiritual systems are currently right now trying to retool to bring its flock back into the fold, right? And I truly appreciate that, and I'm really glad that I'm able to witness this, because I really never believed that this was ever going to happen within my lifetime. I thought these were things that we were always going to be talking about or talking towards, and that maybe my grandson or my great-grandson will be able to experience this moment in time. But thanks to white supremacy and it being afraid of a black man, white supremacy has stepped all over itself and given black people an opportunity globally to reconnect with each other without as much resistance as far as international relations that we usually get from the West as we usually have. So with the inept governments of the West, we're able to, organize ourselves, right? Like, to be honest, Donald Trump might be the best thing that ever happened to us, because Donald Trump is so ridiculous. He never really planned his African strategy very well. So because he didn't plan his African strategy very well, because he ignored it, and he truly believes that Africa is a shithole country, even though it's a continent with 54 countries, that gives us the ability to play dumb while making smart moves. And Africa's been doing that, right? And I'm very happy that Africa is now taking its place on the global stage as leaders, as a part of the emerging multipolar world where multiple different economies will be the center of global finance and commerce and movement, right? And we African Americans, since we are a nation within a nation as defined legally by America, we are just Americans, but by our brothers and sisters on the continent, we are their children, all right? And they come home to gather us, right? They're reaching out with their hands and olive leaves and olive branches, saying, come on home. We understand that there's history between us. We understand that we did this, that this happened, but we all have a collective future that we want to go towards, and we can only do it together. Because truthfully, we can only do it together. Europeans had to unite. Even though they fought each other and murdered each other throughout their unification, they had to unite in order to take over the world, right? If we want to reverse everything, we have to unite and have a reverse takeover of the world. We have to dismantle white supremacy and their Western ways of thinking and operating, and that's going to take us to unite to do it, and it's happening. The internet is making us unite. The internet is giving us the opportunity to unite. So yeah, you see diaspora wars, you see all these fights and stuff, but there's much more happening, outside of the diasporas. For every diaspora war video you see, and people, being intellectually lazy and just going for the cheaper content, rage bait and gaslighting, the majority of the black diaspora and the continental Africans are on good terms, and we are doing things together business-wise, economically. Our families are uniting. Our cultures are mixing and uniting. We're creating a new future culture. Our children, what we call African-American culture, what we call African culture, we call Afro-Brazilian and Caribbean culture, all that is going to mix into a new world global black culture, right? And it's nothing we can do about it, and there's nothing bad about it, because culture has always changed. You go back far enough, all the various different cultures that we call ourselves, whether Yubo, Igbo, Akan, Hausa, Fulani, whatever, all those cultures are splits off of older cultures that practiced something else, called themselves something else, and did things differently, right? Culture always changes, but who is the progenitors of that culture was important, and we are the progenitors of not only global black culture, but global culture in itself, right? And if we can take our culture and make it a more applicable world for everybody, that's something that we should definitely do. So anyway, without further ado, you guys tell me what you think about this in the comment section. Just Afro Think Tank, learn something, teach something. I'm out.
ATT News Network, Africa and the Global Diaspora. This is ATT News Network, Afro Think Tank News Network. Our fifth and final story today isn't about one isolated event. It's about a larger transformation taking place in the relationship between Africa and its global diaspora. For decades, the message directed toward African Americans and other descendants of Africans scattered throughout the world was primarily cultural. Come home. Visit Africa. Discover your ancestry. Reconnect with the continent. That message hasn't disappeared, but something else is increasingly being added to it. Citizenship, investment, residency, education, entrepreneurship, property, and long-term institutional relationships. In other words, the conversation may be moving from simply visiting Africa toward establishing a permanent position within Africa. Benin provides one of the clearest examples. The West African nation has established a nationality pathway intended for descendants of Africans deported through the transatlantic slave trade. That is historically remarkable. For centuries, millions of descendants of enslaved Africans lived outside the continent, without any practical legal connection to the African societies from which their ancestors were taken. Today, at least some African governments are experimenting with mechanisms designed to rebuild that connection. Ghana has pursued another approach. Its 2019 year of return became internationally known for encouraging members of the African diaspora to visit the country and reconnect with African history and culture. But Ghana didn't stop with tourism. The conversation evolved into Beyond the Return, an effort emphasizing longer-term relationships involving investment, relocation, business, education, and diaspora participation. In this week, as we discussed earlier on ATT News Network, Ghana's Asante Heen has been in Washington speaking about stronger relationships involving scholarship, education, enterprise, and investment. Taken individually, these developments might appear unrelated, but together they point towards something larger. The Africa-diaspora relationship may be entering another stage. Stage 1 was remembrance. Understanding that millions of people throughout the Americas and Caribbean descend from Africans forcibly removed from the continent. Stage 2 was reconnection. Travel, cultural exchange, DNA testing, historical research, festivals, homecoming ceremonies. But stage 3 may be establishment. Citizenship, residency, businesses, property, education, investment, and institutions. That changes the question dramatically. Instead of asking, should African Americans visit Africa? We begin asking, what position should African Americans establish in Africa? And that question becomes particularly important when we think generationally. Africa contains some of the youngest populations in the world. Its cities are expanding. Consumer markets are developing. Technology ecosystems are growing. Infrastructure is being built. And the African Continental Free Trade Area represents an ambitious attempt to create greater economic integration across the continent. Meanwhile, Black America possesses enormous economic resources, professional expertise, educational institutions, and entrepreneurial experience. Imagine those resources connecting more systematically. Historically Black universities partnering with African universities. African American entrepreneurs partnering with African businesses. Students studying on both sides of the Atlantic. Diaspora investors participating in African agriculture, manufacturing, technology, tourism, and housing. And African companies developing stronger commercial relationships with Black consumers in the United States. But AT&T News Network must also emphasize something extremely important. Africa is not one country. There are 54 internationally recognized African states, each with its own laws, economy, political environment, property rules, and investment risks. Citizenship does not automatically guarantee prosperity. Buying property does not automatically make an investment safe. And emotional appeals about returning to Africa should never replace professional legal advice, financial research, or due diligence. Pan-Africanism cannot survive on emotion alone. It must eventually create institutions, businesses, schools, trade networks, investment systems, research partnerships, transportation links, and relationships capable of surviving beyond individual personalities. That may be the real significance of what we're witnessing. The first generation reopened the door. The next generation may decide what to build after walking through it. For descendants of Africans throughout the world, the question may no longer simply be, where do we come from? The next question could become, what are we going to build together? This is AT&T News Network, Afro Think Tank News Network. Learn something. Teach something.